Hi, I'm Rochelle Kopp. I'm a management consultant, and I'm also the author of quite a few books on communicating effectively in English. And today I'd like to give you some ideas for how you can improve your communication when you're working with non-Japanese in English. So what I'd like to do is tell you about a couple different typical things that are problematic for Japanese when they're working in English. The first thing is, it's very important to realize that some of the phrases that you might have learned in Japan aren't necessarily the best way to express things. For example, in school, Japanese often learn that shinakereばならないshould be translated as must or had better. However, must and had better really sound like orders to native English speakers and can sound very, very rude. So let me give you an example. At one of my clients, a Japanese company at their operation in the US, every month they had a special luncheon for all the employees who had joined the company that month. As you know, unlike Japan, in the United States, people join companies and leave companies all the time. So all employees don't start in April, they start at various different times. And every month this company would have a luncheon with the president, who was from Japan, and as a very special thing, they would serve Japanese food. So one month, the assistant to the president, who was Japanese, was sending an invitation to everyone to attend this luncheon. And one of the Americans wrote back and said, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to attend. I decline to attend." And the Japanese assistant to the president was very surprised and wrote back and said, "Well, you must attend." Well, the American who got told they must attend was very unhappy, felt very insulted, and it turned into a huge problem. What I would recommend is something more like, "I'm so surprised and disappointed to hear that you don't want to attend. May I ask why?" Okay. So saying here, very surprised and disappointed. And may I ask why? Because what I recommend in this situation is to get into a dialogue with the person. It turned out in this case, the reason the employee said she didn't want to go is that she was very nervous about eating Japanese food. She had never had it before. She was afraid she wouldn't like it and then it would be awkward or embarrassing or some other problem. So if the assistant to the president had said something like this, she could have started a dialogue and found out what the problem was and maybe done something, maybe not have Japanese food for that one person, have something different that would still enable them to participate. Let me share now a second very, very typical situation. I've heard this same thing happen so many times I can't even tell you. So what happens is a non-Japanese employee says to their Japanese supervisor, "I have this idea, what do you think of it?" And the Japanese supervisor says, "Well, I think that will be difficult." And then hearing the word difficult, many native English speakers think that they have been given a challenge and that they have to try harder. And as you know, when Japanese say something is difficult, or musukashi in Japanese, it usually means it's not a good idea, please stop. So in this situation, what would it be more effective for the boss to say to their employee? I recommend a several-step approach. First, it's always good to start with something positive. In this case, the employee has made a suggestion, and so you should start off by thanking the employee for that. Thank you for making a suggestion. Second step, however, You are signaling that there's some problem. Third, this is where you want to really say very, very clearly what you're thinking. And so in this case, you'd say, we're not able to do that. Okay. It's always very, very important in communicating in English to share the reason why. So in addition to saying you can't do it, you need to explain what the reason is. So for example, you would say, because we don't have enough budget, or we have other priorities, or it's not feasible. Whatever the reason is, you should say very, very clearly. Then I recommend that you end up with something positive. And so that may mean saying something like, we couldn't do what you suggested this time, but I would like you to make more suggestions, or keep making suggestions in the future. Or, I'm sorry we couldn't do this, but I have something else really interesting that I'd like you to work on. Lastly, I'd like to talk about what to do in a situation where you have some people who don't speak Japanese. Now, a lot of times what happens is the meeting might be going along fine in English, but then the Japanese have something that they want to check among themselves, and they switch into Japanese, and then they keep speaking in Japanese for a really long time, and the people who don't understand Japanese are sitting there thinking, what are they talking about? Or they might even think, oh, they're telling some secret they don't want us to hear. And it's really usually just not a good impression. You really want to avoid it. So you should say something like, excuse us, we need to speak in Japanese for a moment. Okay? Now when you say for a moment, that's showing that it's not going to be 5 or 10 minutes, that it's going to be short. This is also a situation where it's helpful to use the reason why. So for example, because we need to confirm our understanding of one point. Now that's a little long, so you could also say, because we need to check one point. That would be fine, but you need to say something. You know, why are we speaking Japanese? It needs to be clear, right? Then what I recommend is that you keep the Japanese to be no longer than 3 minutes. So keep it to 3 minutes. Then switch back to English. And when you switch back to English, first you want to say, thank you. Or you could even say, thank you for your patience. Then finally what you want to do is you want to very quickly explain what it is you said in Japanese. You could say, for example, we were able to confirm that we all understood. Or something like that, whatever it was. Or thank you for your patience, we now all understand. Because they're going to wonder what it was you said when you were speaking Japanese. So these are 3 examples of some ways that you can have your conversation in English be more effective and also really more polite.